Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So there is a powerful panel of folks here that are with me today, and the real purpose is for us to have a conversation. I didn't come here to give a long speech or anything, but the issue we're talking about right now, gun violence, is an issue that so many Americans feel about in a way that is deeply, deeply painful and deeply hurtful. Not only that, there are people who aren't directly affected by this, but understand that we live in a nation where injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Yes. We live in a nation where something that affects one family directly affects us all indirectly. I've been to town halls now all throughout the country to hear parents who've never been directly affected by gun violence, but now when they send their child to school, feel that deep sense of fear and worry about their children's safety, or when they send a kid out to their first concert, or when they go worship in their place of worship, they feel a sense of fear that shouldn't be in this nation. But we live in a country where someone that's my age, that in the course of our lives, more people have been murdered by gun violence than in every single war combined in our country. And so I'm looking forward to having a conversation with people whose lives have been directly impacted and who have strong feelings about what we must do as a community together to do something about it. But I want you to know a little bit about me first and foremost. This is an issue I don't come from as just from a policy perspective. It is deeply personal to me. I'm the only person in the United States Senate that lives in a low-income black and brown community. The median income where I live in my beautiful neighborhood is about $14,000 per household, according to the last census. In my community, I see the penetrating injustices that exist. I see that people who work full-time jobs still have to go to the bodega and use food stamps just to raise their family. I still live in a community where kids drink out of bottled water. There are 3,000 jurisdictions in America where children have twice the blood lead levels than Flint, Michigan. And y'all know what I'm talking about. I live in a community where the asthma rates are off the charts, the environmental toxins, from the economic injustice to the environmental injustice to even just the fact that we should not live in a country where anybody has to pay more than a third of their of income in rent. And I talk about a lot of these issues is because we often come at gun violence from one narrow perspective when it is really a public health issue, when there are many, many issues that are swirling around, that are creating climates in which violence happens, and we have to have a larger conversation. In my community, I am tired of seeing street-level shrines to children who have been murdered, candles and teddy bears as you drive around my community. I'm tired of going to funeral after funeral when the most perverse, unnatural things happen where parents bury children. I'm tired of knowing kids. In my neighborhood, I lived in the projects for almost 10 years, and child after child from Brick Towers, where I lived, have been murdered. The most recent was Shahad Smith at the top of my block last year, where I live, killed with an assault rifle. People in my neighborhood, 4th of July, it is not always happy and festive when you have children who hear those pops and those booms and exhibit symptoms of post-traumatic stress. Parents telling me that their kids hide when they hear fireworks. They duck for cover. I've sat there trying to stop a child from bleeding to death, a teenager shot in the chest multiple times, watching the most gruesome, god-awful thing imaginable, not glorified like we see on TV, foamy blood coming from the young man's mouth, trying to stop him from bleeding to death, and he died. This is an issue for me that drives me every day because I live in the neighborhood that understands that mass shootings are horrific and painful, but we must understand that every day in America, in the aggregate, we have a mass shooting. Every single day. I'm an African-American male, and my communities, look, black men are 6% of the nation's population, but we make up over 50% of the homicide victims. And we need to have more courageous empathy for each other. This problem can't be solved unless we begin to listen to the many different voices from our veterans committing suicide at rates that are unacceptable in a nation that literally sings in its songs that we are the home of the brave. But yet when men and women come home, they don't find one. You see folks who are struggling with mental illness in a country where our biggest mental health institutions are jails and prisons. And then we do things to people in jail and prison that compound mental illness, that trigger mental illness, like solitary confinement, like juvenile solitary confinement. Yes. And so this is an issue that we have to talk about in all of its manifestations and understand that every day, every hour that passes, there's another community grieving. And folks don't understand. One gunshot. In my neighborhood, there's an IHOP. One shooting in that IHOP. One family, immigrant family, having their lives torn asunder. But it was more than that. People stopped going to the IHOP, so they canceled the night shift. People lost jobs, lost income. Parents now struggling to find a way to make ends meet. These things don't just happen and go away. They tear, they ripple out, they penetrate. Those wounds are carried with folks. So I feel a sense of urgency. I'm going to bring a fight to this problem, not just when I was mayor, not just as a senator, but God willing, if I'm president of the United States, I'm going to bring a fight to this issue because I learned in my small church growing up as a little boy that faith without works is dead. And I'm tired of hearing people who all they have to offer is thoughts and prayers. We are better than this. We are stronger than this. We can have more empathy and more love. We can change this. These problems are not bigger than we are. And I'm really looking forward to the conversation. So I'm going to